this first episode, we're going to introduce the book and the authors. My father is Dr. Roger Dale Blomquist, MD, and I am Dr. Roger Carey Blomquist, PhD. My father had a supraconsciousness experience that led to a new understanding of the universe. He was agnostic until he learned how things really are. Science does not disprove God or a creative force. In fact, it is quite the contrary. In a sentence, tell us what the book is about.
The book shows the scientific need for a creative force that is both infinitely conscious and intelligent.
So in a nutshell, tell us a little bit about the book.
Well, it's based on the concept that consciousness is a primary property of the universe and is a necessary ingredient which allows for the creation and evolution of the universe. And within the last couple of decades, there have been more and more scientists who have come to the conclusion that our creation and evolution could not be the result of chance alone, as science has maintained for the last couple of 100 years, that there really needs to be a creative force that is infinitely conscious, infinitely intelligent, which was necessary for the creation of the universe and the evolution of the universe to where we now find ourselves.
Who is the target audience of the book?
Well, I think that this would be of interest to most anybody, but it was really directed towards an agnostic and even more specifically scientific agnostics who don't really have a firm belief one way or the other in a creative force, God, or the evolution of the universe occurring by chance.
Okay, why the agnostic? Why did you target them, or why did you decide to write to an agnostic?
I was writing to myself. When I was a teenager, going through high school, college, pre-med, medicine, I was finding myself in a dilemma where the religious background from where I came was telling me there was a God that created the universe, and science, which was telling me that no, there is no God, that this occurred by chance, and that the concept of God is an invention of our mind. And I was in a state of agnosticism, which was approaching atheism, where science was winning over my initial thought that, yeah, was a God. There had to be a God for all of this as we see it in our reality. And I wish this book had been written by somebody when I was younger that I could have read, because I think the evidence for a creator is so overwhelming that could have saved me a lot of grief. I think that I would have benefited greatly from the understanding that, yeah, there is a great deal of science which mandates the need for a creator. It wasn't there 40 years ago when I was, or 50 or 60 years ago when I really needed this information. And it has changed my life dramatically by gaining this knowledge.
So Genesis 3.0, where does the 3.0 come from?
Well, Genesis 1.0, I think, would refer to Moses. 2.0 would be science's explanation. And 3.0 is the blending of the two. They interconnect quite well if you have an understanding of how that might be.
So that fits into the full title then, Genesis 3.0, creation update. So the update is bringing and blending the two of them together.
Yes.
And then what Moses could not tell us, science now can.
Yes.
So very creative. So take us through your journey for just a moment, through the experience. Describe it to me as I'm sitting at your feet as a child and listening to you tell me what it was like.
My wife and I were in bed, and it was about 10:30. She rolled over and went to sleep, and I decided, well, this is a good time for me to meditate. I'd been learning to meditate for about a year, and so I was pretty well versed on meditation. I went through the relaxation procedure, which took me about 15 minutes, where all my muscles were totally relaxed. I opened my mind to a meditative state, and it took about 30 minutes for me to pass a threshold, let's say, from a state of ordinary consciousness into what I would now call a superconsciousness state, and more specifically, a peak experience. I entered this state of mind where my understanding of reality suddenly became omniscient. I had a complete and utter understanding of absolutely everything. That was my perception. No contradictions. And not only that, my consciousness went from the state of ordinary consciousness, where it's essentially related to my body. It expanded out through the rest of the universe so that I had the sensation that there was no boundary to my consciousness. Uh, it has been stated by other people that I felt one with the universe. And that's where that statement comes from. Your, your consciousness expands to the point where there is no boundary to it. It is infinite. You're in a state where you feel total love beyond anything that you could begin to describe with language. It's ineffable, as the term is implies. Um, I felt totally loved beyond anything that I could describe. Also, total peace. It lasted about 6 hours, from maybe 11 o'clock till 5 in the morning, where I remained in this state. And then it was time to get up. I had to go to work, had to go read x-rays. And so got up, got ready, went to work. And over a period of a few hours, amnesia started to set in, where I was losing the memory of what I had experienced. The amnesia continued on, so that over a period of, let's say, 2 days, most of what I experienced and could retain in my superconsciousness state mostly dissolved away. I had no memory of it. And it seemed to follow an exponential curve. And by that, I mean, it started out slowly, and then it just gradually got less and less of a memory, until most of it was gone about 48 hours. At least 90+% of it was gone, and within a few days it was all gone. That was the biggest loss, was the amnesia. Okay, but I had had this experience, and I figured somewhere in my unconscious memory or my subconscious memory, it still has to be there. And I came up with the thought, well, okay, I had this experience. I got it during a state of meditation. I will now go back and do meditation time after time after time over an extended period of time, which I did. And I was able to bring back bits and pieces of it. And I found that I had to write it down, because if I didn't, in the state of meditation, I would remember it, but when I left meditation back into an ordinary state of consciousness, I would forget most of what I had re-experienced. So what I ended up doing was meditating time after time after time, writing down everything that I could remember right after I had the meditation. And by bits and pieces, I was able to bring enough of this back together to come up with what I first wrote in book form entitled The Integrated Theory of Intelligence. And as I did more research on consciousness and intelligence, it became apparent to me that the literature was really talking about consciousness rather than intelligence. And so I reformatted the book and rewrote it in similar fashion with the title Integrated Theory of Consciousness. Now, what I also came to realize that you need both words, consciousness dash intelligence, for one word. The two go together. Intelligence means that you have to be conscious to be intelligent, and you have to have consciousness to be intelligent. The two words mean one thing, just like matter energy are the same and space time are the same. Well, they're not quite the same, but they're spectrums of the same thing. So you got matter energy and you have space time, and physicists and other scientists outside of the field of physics would say the entire reality of our universe can be explained by the properties of matter, energy, space, time. And I say that's incomplete. The universe is made up of matter, energy, space, time, intelligence, consciousness. You have 6 properties that are required to explain the universe, which are so totally interrelated, interconnected, that you really can't think of them as 6 different things. They are totally integrated. It is our reductionist mind that divides these things out so that we think of them separately. You can't do that. I mean, that's not the way reality is.
Okay. So if I have a near-death experience, am I going to experience anything near to what you experienced in your superconsciousness state?
Yes. Um, they're very they're they're different, but they're coming from the same place, and they have core elements which overlap. And there are much more similarity between near-death experience and a peak experience than there are differences.
So then tell us these similarities, because a lot of people know about the near-death experiences, where not a lot know about the peak experience. So help us to understand a little bit better using near-death experience as a guide to what a peak experience is like.
Okay, well, starting with the near-death experience, you have the perception that you have died. Most people believe that they are
Bright
near.
light tunnel
Yeah,
and see
you
their
go
body.
through a bright light, you go through a tunnel, a dark tunnel to a bright light, and that's not the usual concept that you have during a peak experience. And with a peak experience, the, the things that correlate are you can have a life review, which is usually more limited in a peak experience than in a near-death experience. But a lot of people have a rather lengthy um, life review. I had a very minimal life review, but others who have had peak experiences have described life reviews which are very similar to the life review that somebody having a near-death experience might uh, might have. Uh, so there's that, but both have the the perception of infinite love, that the degree of love that you feel in this state is just beyond anything that anyone could ever comprehend. if they're not in a superconsciousness state. It goes for both of them. Same about peace, but they are more similar than different. And again, they both come from the same place and require the presence of a universal mind or cosmic consciousness, which we will also get into, but they are both coming from a universal mind, or that's at least the basis of how this can happen.
So you had your peak experience over 40 years ago. You wrote Integrated Theory of Intelligence, which became Integrated Theory of Consciousness. Right. Why did you wait over 40 years to write Genesis 3.0?
Well, I knew back 40 some odd years ago that what I was writing would be objectionable to science in general, that I would either be ignored or I would face a lot of backlash from those who would say, you don't know what you're talking about, you're an idiot. And because I knew at that time that this was so far ahead of what science had dealt with that it just, well, it would be ignored. And since then, we have developed not only with more science, but a greater understanding of spiritual principles as more and more people have had peak experiences in addition to mine, that there are now scientists who are able to bridge that gap also, so that they see the need, the absolute need for a creative influence that goes beyond what science can deal with, to put our reality in a form that is comprehensible.
So you've gone from the status of would-be crackpot to avant-garde.
Yeah, thank you. The first part of the book deals with quite a few who have had such an experience. I describe their experience, and I also uh, talk about what they derived from their experience, all of which are similar to the concepts that I derived. They're not exactly the same, just like in near-death experience. It's an individual experience, and other people who've had near-death experiences have an overlapping of experience, but there are different things which are not the same within each experience. And I would say that each superconsciousness experience is tailor-made for the individual. Well, the same thing applies to any superconsciousness state. The experience is tailor-made for the person who is having the experience. And that's what the first part of the book deals with, is giving names and the experiences that were similar to what I experienced, which gives validation to my experience, and my experience giving validation to their experiences. But more and more people are having these states of consciousness and coming up with these increased understandings of a reality, higher level concepts, higher order concepts, which are new. But more and more people are coming up having similar experiences with these new ideas. And as more and more continue to have these, and I think that the increase in the number of people that are going to have them in the future will also be exponential. I think that's what's been happening throughout history. More and more people are having superconsciousness experiences in the last 50 years than ever before. And it's becoming increasingly more frequent. And scientists now are writing books about their new understanding of some parts of science based on their superconsciousness experience. And so I think that's important to know, because, hey, I'm not the only one. Other people, more and more people are having similar experiences now. And so one of these days downstream, it's going to be quite a common thing.